Welcome to this walkthrough for Voices of Soul from EastWest. I'm Josh Carney and I'll be your host. Voices of Soul contains 66 sample-based instruments and 604 unique phrases. All of these are rich, soulful vocal performances recorded by CeCe White, produced by Doug Rogers and Nick Phoenix. Voices of Soul is a blend of funk, soul, reggae, southern blues, gospel, R&B, jazz, and a bit of Latin flair as well. When you load Voices of Soul, you'll see 8 folders in the browser, each with their own vocal style. The first folder contains sustained performances, so this first patch contains ah syllables. When you double-click to load an instrument, you'll see the key range below. So there's a whole bunch of different sustained vocal syllables to pick from. Here's the do patch.
Do, 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 do.
And here's a humming patch. So these are all perfect patches for backing vocal beds if you need to accent the lead vocals or harmonize with the lead vocals or other instruments in your song, but you don't have a group of 4 people to back you up. Voices of Soul becomes your backing vocal group. The legato patches allow you to play in more melismatic phrases. These are velocity sensitive. A higher velocity will make the interval between 2 notes quicker, and a lower velocity will play more of the interval. So let's start with this ah legato patch here. The patches with the additional mod label at the end of them allow you to switch between different sounds with the modulation wheel. This patch is an ah syllable when the modulation wheel is down, a la syllable when the modulation wheel is in the middle, and a ha syllable when the mod wheel is up. The combo mod folder has several different sustained syllables that can be switched with the modulation wheel. This first one has an ah, o, and u syllable in it, all on the same patch. If I move the modulation wheel while playing this, you'll hear all 4 syllables. This next one contains ho, wo, and o vowel syllables.
Ho, wo, o.
Notice that the higher tones change a bit as she sings up in her falsetto range. So for example, the ho syllable is more of like a ho, but in the high range, it's more of a hoo. So this is great because it gives the performance a bit of variation and color depending on what voice range you're playing in. So this adds a further element of realism to these patches. The combo RR patches contain velocity-sensitive, sustained patches that contained round-robin programming. Round-robin is just a term that means alternating samples. So this first patch alternates between a ah syllable and a ha syllable. And this is a lot more intense at a higher velocity. And some of these have more than 2 alternating syllables. For example, this patch has o, la, and syllables. The Mod Xfade Chords folder contains patches that have 2 different intensities per note. So these are not velocity sensitive, but rather the modulation wheel controls the dynamic. So when I play this ah patch with the modulation wheel down, I get this. And when I play the mod wheel up, I get this. Now this is great because you can pull up or down the intensity of the performance within a note or chord with the modulation wheel for an added element of realism in the performance. Here's the same thing with the oo patch. With the phrases folder, I find it really easy to come up with some great ideas because it contains performances of full phrases, not just individual syllables. So if I select the first phrase here, VOS phrases 01A, this means that all of the phrases on this patch will fit into a key with the root note of A. Likewise, if I want all of my phrases to fit into a key with the root note of F, I'll just select the F phrases here. Now the last folder, Key Switch, contains most of the library within these 3 different key switch patches. I'll use the sustain key switch patch to demonstrate this. Now if you don't know what key switching is, it allows you to switch between different sets or layers of samples by pressing a specific key on your MIDI controller, or by selecting it from the interface here. So you can see all of your playable notes here, and all of your key switches over here in blue. So if I start on the low C key switch, I'll get the ah sustain patch. And as I switch between these different key switches, you'll hear different syllables played on each one. So this is great because you can switch back and forth between different syllables within a composition with your MIDI controller, or by programming the key switches in with your MIDI editor. Now, with the phrases key switch, you'll notice that the range of playable notes changes drastically depending on what key switch I'm on. This is because the phrase key switch patch contains all of the phrases within the phrases folder. So the reason why is that it maps all of the key switches chromatically up the keyboard here. So if I select the low C here, all of the phrases I can play have a root note of C. If I choose F sharp, for example, all of the phrases are now in F sharp. So this is a great way to quickly switch between all of the phrases within the phrases folder. The phrases key switch effects presets folder is essentially the same as the phrases key switch folder. However, it has various different effects presets applied to them. For example, this Drunken Love preset has sort of like a chorus doubling effect on it. And this Splashy Room preset has some pretty heavy delay and modulation effects on it. So I'll switch back to the sustain key switch patch, and I'll check out the player view next. So I'll click on the player tab up here, and one thing you'll see in the middle is all of the available articulations for this patch. Now these articulations are all different unique layers within this patch. So for a key switch patch, there's one for each different key switch. Now if I select a simpler patch, like one of my combo mod patches here, you'll notice that there's only 4 articulations, because there's only 4 syllables or vowel sounds to pick from within this patch. You can make each articulation active or inactive by clicking here, and if you make a key switch articulation inactive, you'll see the key switch disappear down here, and you won't be able to use it until you make it active again. You can also completely unload an articulation from memory and save yourself a bit of RAM. So if you're only going to use 3 or 4 key switches for your composition, you can go ahead and unload any key switches that you're not going to use to save memory. Over here you have your master section with a master volume fader, a VU meter, and a pan knob. You can double click on any of your controls to reset them back to the default setting. Here you can adjust the coarse tuning in semitones, or the fine tuning in cents. You can also choose one of 5 different channel source formats: stereo, sum all channels to mono, mono from left channels, mono from right channels, or you can also swap the left and right channels. You can also apply a stereo doubler to the instrument. You can toggle this off or on here, and you can adjust the amount of the doubling effect here. You can turn on the reverb here, and this can be adjusted, changed, or turned off completely, so the user has total control over this. I'll try out something even longer, like this large church setting. You can adjust the pre-delay and the volume of the reverb here to accent it even further. Now, if you're layering multiple different instruments in play, you can make this reverb the master reverb for all instruments in this instance of play. This helps conserve CPU rather than running individual reverbs for each instrument. Since I'm just using Voices of Soul for this instrument, I'll keep this off. Down here is a 3-fader mixer that allows you to individually control the close, rear, and room microphones of the recording. The way all of these patches were recorded is with the close mics up near the singer, the room mics more distant away from the singer, and the rear mics positioned behind the singer. So this mixer allows you to blend these different microphones together. If you want a more direct sound, you can roll off the rear and room mics, and I'll also turn off the reverb to demonstrate this. If I want a more ambient sound, I can pull down the close mics and then pull up the rear and room mics instead. You can also mute and solo each of these channels, but if you want to completely unload all of the samples within a channel, you can click here to save on memory. On the left, there are some volume envelope controls. So for example, if I want these voices to come in a bit more slowly what I can do is pull up the attack time on these so they fade in more slowly, and maybe pull up the release time a bit too so they fade a bit more slowly. I could also try pulling down the close mics and pulling up the rear and room mics to make this sound even more ambient. If you click on the Mixer tab, you can control the blend of your close, rear, and room mics from here as well. And if you click on this effects button right here, this will take you to a separate page where you can add an SSL EQ, an amp simulator, the convolution reverb, as well as an SSL bus compressor. But there's also two new effects. There's the EP1 delay if you want additional ambience on your vocals. And there's also an ADT effect. ADT stands for automatic double tracking. So this is sort of like a doubling chorus effect. So that's Voices of Soul from EastWest. It's an incredible instrument with over 600 individual vocal phrases, and it's perfect for creating soulful leads, as well as creating backing harmonies sung by the amazing CC White.